Yuma was the very picture of a normal college kid, so it shocked him when he and a few others were summoned to a magical world. What's more, they were bestowed magical abilities, but Yuma thinks he got the shortest straw with the power of immortality. Forced to experience inhumane treatment because of his blessing, everything changed when he met a mysterious girl named Eva. It all began one normal day just like many others. Our hero, Yuma Kurozuka, finally made it to college, and like every comic book MC out there, he was just living plainly day by day. Right now, he parted ways with his friend and was planning to head to the bookstore when a lone white feather dropped by his head. The next thing he knew, the ground swallowed him up and he was left yodeling like a Looney Tune character on the way down. He woke up to the voice calling out to save him, but it was suddenly drowned out by a louder one, telling them to rise and calling them the chosen ones. As it turns out, Yuma wasn't the only person zapped into God knows where. More than a few of them are just gaining consciousness. Suddenly, Berg van Gardgul, the king of the Gardgul Empire, spoke up, silencing them as the older man told them that they were to become the chosen heroes. As if that isn't isekai core enough, the king asks them to help defeat the demon lord and his army. Yuma could only frown, eager to go home, when suddenly another boy, who looked an awful lot like Shoyo Hinata from Haikyuu, questioned the king, asking what he'd get in exchange for helping his royal highness. Yuma couldn't believe the guts on this guy. How could he talk so casually to the king of the land? That's when another person chimed in, promising that they, the chosen ones, would get the appropriate treatment and rewards for their efforts. But wait, there's more. This person further added that they'll even teach Yuma and the other guys lost arts used by the heroes of olden times. The Shoyo lookalike huffed, saying he'd go home if these blessings turned out to be a dud, while the other person led them somewhere else. That guy deciding on his own wasn't the best course of action. Even Yuma knew that, but it's not like he can't say anything knowing how he's such a scaredy cat himself. It's either go with a dude or be left alone with the intimidating king and his guards. Soon enough, they were led to a room with a giant stone figure, hands clasped together in prayer, with a big sword right in front of it. The lady from before told them that that's where they held their rituals, and with Yuma's nerves getting the better of him, he soon calmed down when he heard the Grand Priest Edna Han speak. She instructs them to step up to the podium to help them gain God's blessings, and naturally, the Shoyo lookalike volunteers himself. As soon as he did, Edna told him that he received the flames of hell of the god of flames. The next dude got the power of ice, while Yuma could only hope he'd get a power that protects him from harm. Homeboy was so nervous when he got called that he started walking with his hands and legs in sync, making the lone girl from their group of chosen ones giggle. She also noticed that the feather that got stuck on Yuma fell off. Does this mean something? Once Yuma stepped on the magic circle, the high priestess told him in a quiet voice that he was gifted the ability to revive by the god of healing, which he thinks is a bummer because that means he'll still get hurt, right? Little did he know, some of the other people in the room were talking in hushed tones. A dark-haired man wearing a white uniform approached the other three chosen ones, congratulating them for the blessings they received. Now that it's all settled, he urged them to get something to eat. Meanwhile, Yuma's worried about the blessing. What will happen if he needed to fight? Well, no point in worrying over things that haven't happened yet, because right in front of them is a luxurious feast as promised by the man in glasses who looks like bad news. Plus, he looks like Sho Tucker, so that's convincing enough. But Yuma's too preoccupied with the thought of food, and that's enough of a morale boost for our boy. While they were eating, the Shoyo lookalike, whose name is Keita Akanishi, was rude enough to comment that Yuma's skill doesn't amount to much, but the other dude who was gifted the power of ice, Takuya Araki, chimed in and said that Yuma's power balances out everyone else's. Even Takuya's sister, Kotomi, agrees and adds that at least Yuma's there in case they need healing. Although the siblings' words were reassuring, our boy couldn't help but feel a little pissed because they were already treating him like a non-combatant. He quickly brushed his thoughts away and thought he should just focus on doing his part, so he decided he should start practicing tomorrow. Somewhere else in the building, a man tells the head priestess that all her preparations are complete, while the latter reminds him that they should be careful with him since he's someone precious. The nasty grin from the shadows is all we needed to know that this guy's bad news. The next day, the dark-haired man with glasses came knocking to wake Yuma up. The former explained that they were in dire need of medical supplies and sought Yuma's help since he had the power to revive and help injured people. Once he heard that, Yuma was quick to agree, feeling a little happy that he was the first one to be sought after. But the thing is, he was handed hospital clothes instead of armor. After changing, he walked into the room and felt that something was off. He tried to ease it off, asking them where the people he was going to help were. But the suspicious man from before grabbed him firmly by the shoulder and told poor Yuma that they were going to be using his flesh and blood. Before he could register what was said to him, our MC was strapped down to the medical chair, while the rest of the crew prepared instruments of horror that left Yuma shaking. He started to appeal to them, saying they could start with something small like taking his blood. But our boy didn't even get to finish his sentence when they tore off his arm. Yuma screamed in pain, while the nasty guy wondered if the reason our MC was screaming was if it really hurt or if he was just shocked. But Yuma is in shock, still screaming his lungs out until the man hits him in the face to shut up. That did the job as he narrowed his eyes, telling Yuma that he won't die. True enough, our boy pulled a Deadpool and grew an arm in a matter of moments. It's just the second day in this unknown world, give the kid a break. But the show Tucker looked alike was too fascinated with this discovery. Right then and there, he instructed the crew that they should proceed with using drugs, to Yuma's horror. Everybody else was excited in the room, amazed at what Yuma's body could do. Meanwhile, somewhere else in a building, the feather that fell from Yuma reached a certain lady's room, surprised to know that the child was still alive. The lady holds the feather, eyeing and wondering what was happening out there while our boy Yuma continues to endure horrendous torture for the sake of humanity. He's even come to the point of reminiscing about his future, thinking that he'd be fine with whatever came his way, while undergoing horrible acts of brutality. By now, Yuma's a bloody mess, but the dude from before assured him that it's an honor to be able to serve the people this way forever. Yuma woke up with a jolt, hacking terribly as he felt his neck. Was it all a dream? No. He remembered he passed out halfway through the experiments, and he knew that it would resume again once he regained consciousness. That very thought left him trembling and shaking. He couldn't even remember how many days passed when he suddenly heard footsteps outside his door. When he saw that it was just a guard on patrol, he heaved a sigh of relief before breaking down into a silent sob. As he was doing so, our boy thought strongly, asking for someone to come save him, when suddenly, a giant magic circle appeared above him. The small sounds he made alerted the guards on duty, and when they checked in his room, Yuma's already gone somewhere else, under a giant magical tree. Meanwhile, Keita and Takuya are busy playing chess, unaware of Yuma's predicament, until Kotomi asks them if they want to head to the cafeteria to get some dinner. Her older brother agreed to it, so now she was the first one out the door, which is why she managed to see the evil glasses guy conferring with the others. She approached them asking if there was something wrong, but the latter quickly assured her that everything was dandy fine. Seeing how hardworking they were, Kotomi excused herself and cheered them on, while the glasses dude turned and told his men that she, along with the rest of the chosen ones, should never know about the situation at hand. So far, the only place they haven't searched yet is the labyrinth, so he instructs the rest of the crew to search for Yuma at the labyrinth on the lower level, while he asks for assistance from the priests. Back to Yuma. He continues to lie down under the tree mindlessly when he suddenly hears footsteps approaching his location again. 3 of the men from before were walking towards Yuma's location, talking about how the place is restricted to the priests and ranks above, which is why not many people are allowed in there. The place is also embedded with traps, but as long as they have an artifact with them, the trap won't activate. If someone was unlucky enough to go wandering the labyrinth without an artifact, then all that awaits them is death, just like how Yuma got caught in one right now. Luckily for him, he has the immortality blessing, so soon he's in one piece yet again, though he did feel more of a monster than human with how he's able to regenerate after, experiencing something like that. Still, he continued while wondering why all of this was happening to him, but before he fully wallowed in self-pity, Yuma wiped his tears and promised to get out of there. Just then, the 3 men from before finally saw him, and one of them acted ahead of himself, which was a big mistake. As soon as he ran out, a giant ghoulish hand appeared from above and crushed him, leaving the other 2 frozen in shock. One of the guys stepped back in horror, wondering what the hell that thing was, and the older of them explained that it was the instant magi placed by a magi against monsters. Since he knows there's nothing they can do, he suggests they turn back for now and wait for the priest's support. It's strange though, because how come Yuma was not squished to death by the instant death magi? Speaking of Yuma, he managed to run ahead, and when he saw that he was no longer being chased, he slumped on the floor, huffing for breath. He thought to himself how strange the labyrinth was when he heard a voice asking what he was doing. That rattled our boy, looking for where the voice came from when the latter directed that they were down the hole. Yuma peeked down and saw a pretty lady who introduced herself as Eva, staring at him with twinkling eyes. Ah, it's a girl. Yuma was a bit baffled but introduced himself anyway. More important than that, this Eva girl's got some pretty funny looking tubes attached to her body. And that's when it hit him. Maybe this girl is also being subjected to horrible experiments. So he asked if she was also being experimented on by the others. Eva casually answered that it was something like that, but she was quick to notice that Yuma hinted that he was being forced to undergo a lot of cruel tests. In a quiet voice, our boy said he was, but Eva's far too casual about it, suggesting that he rest up and relax a bit since he was already there. After all, not a lot of people managed to get there anyway. Speaking of people, she finally noticed that Yuma was alone, so that made her curious about how he managed to get there. Remembering how he died and was brought back to life earlier, Yuma could only mutter that he managed to pass through it by sheer force, leaving Eva even more puzzled. Before she could ask, Yuma explained that he was blessed with immortality, and if it weren't for that, he would have been long gone by now. Eva was surprised to see that Yuma was immortal, seeing how he looked every bit like a normal human, but then again, she understood that this must be the reason why he was being experimented on in the first place. Compared to him, Eva looks in better shape than he is, but if she's in a similar situation as him, then it's best if they can run away together, right? Without a second thought, Yuma asks her if she wants to run away with him, though he is quick to add that he's pretty useless like a paperclip with his non-existent combat techniques. However, he also believes that he can maybe do something with his immortality skill. He couldn't just leave her there, so no. He urges her to see the world outside, breathe fresh air, and eat all sorts of delicious food out there. An awkward silence filled the hall, quiet enough that he could actually see tumbleweed rolling if you squinted hard enough. So he felt a little hesitant about what to do next. When Eva spoke, she asked him if he was going to do something about the traps out there, which he said he would, but before he could go into full explanation mode, Eva cut him off to tell him that he doesn't need to grow accustomed to pain and fear if he wants to remain human. That left him speechless, but Eva quickly changed the topic and asked if he was aware of the pipes connected to her. She explains that it's being used to drain her blood 24/7, which is why she feels a bit anemic and powerless. So with that said, she asks if he can share a bit of his blood with her. By doing so, she can help him escape, assuring him that she's much stronger than she looks. Just confirms his suspicions. Eva's being held against her will here and being experimented on. Without hesitation, he extended his hand and offered his blood, urging Eva to take as much as she'd like because he'd never die anyway. Eva reached back, eyes gleaming, and said it was a promise, when suddenly, a black blur flew out of her hand and went straight to Yuma. It was a bat. She tells him that it's just part of her when suddenly, the bat pricks Yuma's arm before proceeding to fly back to Eva's palm, merging with her. She looks down, exposing her nape where the pipes were connected. Soon enough, the engraving on her neck starts to disappear. She ditched the pipes, and now, just as promised, she flies straight to Yuma, leaning over him on all fours. She swears on her name, Eva Scarlet, pure blood and the true ancestor of Red, that she will set Yuma free. She finally leans on his neck to suck Yuma's blood, just as it finally dawned on our homeboy that she's actually a vampire. What, the bats and the blood didn't, give it away? Eva didn't suck him dry and just sucked enough, leaving her refreshed and all pumped up. After all, it's been ages since she last fed directly, so she also decided to add in a little smooch to thank Yuma. After that, Eva hoisted him under her arm, happy to have picked something interesting before spreading her wings and zooming out there. Now that they were out there, Eva was already doing the math, thinking that their first hurdle would be the Magi from above, but to her surprise, it didn't respond to them when she flew by. Well, she could only attribute it to one thing: Yuma, who was close to puking his gut out. But before she could say anything, the men from before finally found them. As they fired the first shot, Eva didn't even lift a finger because their attacks never reached the two of them. From there, she decided to go on the offensive, raising her arm high as a giant magic circle appeared from above, followed by a great explosion. Eva blew a hole through the castle walls and flew high with Yuma in tow. She was getting too excited, eager to set a sea of flames in the area, just when the 3 other chosen ones saw her fly out with our MC. Keita was quick to act, grabbing a spear and jumping up to force Eva to let Yuma go, but the pure blood was far too quick. She was just about to unleash a fiery attack when Yuma told her to stop at the last minute. She wasn't able to stop it, but she did fire it away from Keita's face and push the ladder away from them, crashing into one of the nearby buildings because of the sheer force. Eva calls out Yuma for stopping her at the last minute, asking if she knew that kid, and Yuma says he was one of the others summoned in this world. The pureblood wasn't too bummed out as she saw the havoc she created. Her eyes roamed over the whole castle, thinking that this should be enough to hold them back for a little while. Now that they're out, she asks Yuma what they want to do next, and the latter says he wants to find a way back into his own world. Upon hearing that, Eva took it upon herself to become his bodyguard. After all, she vowed to set him free, and vampires held great importance to promises. Now carrying Yuma princess style, her eyes gleamed as she told him he'd have to entertain her thoroughly before flying out to the night sky. Below them, the high priestess watches wordlessly while a hooded figure kneels in front of her and the nasty dude. Without looking at the man, Edna tells him that she has a mission for him, to recapture Yuma from the vampire, and that he's free to use that tool. Yuma woke up disoriented, wondering where he was when he heard Eva asking him if he wanted to take a bath in her birthday suit. Our shy MC whipped his head the other way so fast, cheeks turning beet red when he glimpsed the pureblood. And aren't vampires supposed to be weak against sunlight? He hadn't even recovered from what he had just seen when an unknown man popped right in front of him, offering him a fresh set of clothes. Yuma could only crawl backward as Eva tells him that this is just some random salesman she hypnotized along the way to be her slave. Mind control was a pretty common skill among vampires after all, but she assured Yuma that she wouldn't use it against him because she promised to be our hero's bodyguard. Now with a fresh set of clothes, Eva says they should head to the big town nearby, where Yuma finally had his fill of food. While wolfing down the food, he was just about to ask her about it when the pureblood casually told him that she already had her fill, and even added that Yuma has iron deficiency. Now, on to more important matters, earning money. Seeing how Eva uses her mind control freely, Yuma tells her that he doesn't really want to earn money through that kind of method, but thankfully the vampire has a few ideas of her own. They start walking along the forest, cleaning, and Eva explains that they can quickly earn coins from the guild as long as they hunt monsters. But before that, Yuma needs to register as an adventurer first, reminding him that he's living in an isekai. Alright, but it is funny though, there didn't seem to be any monsters around, which Eva agreed to as well, so she suddenly dashed further into the forest. A moment later, a horde of monsters started to run to Yuma, who sat frozen in fear. Just as he was about to be caught in the stampede, there was a swift movement where the monster's head started rolling thanks to Eva's quick attacks. That's when he realized why it was so quiet. They were all trying to run away from Eva. Not that it matters because they're all dead, so now Yuma's concern is how to carry all of this monster meat back to the guild. Eva suggested he store them in his item box, but it was the first time Yuma had even heard about it. Apparently, all the chosen ones can use it. Furthermore, Eva believes that he also has an appraisal skill that can help them classify the monsters. And what do you know? It works. Yuma's surprised to see that he does have an item box and can appraise a lot of things. But what's even more shocking to him is the fact that he can control various things. While Eva runs off to the other end, sensing something out there, Yuma notices that one of the monsters is still alive. The monster immediately hurls a black liquid off of its mouth as a dying attempt to attack, but it never reaches our MC because a magic circle shielded him from it. Seeing what just happened made Yuma wonder if he just used magic. That's strange. He didn't even do anything, and yet somehow it reminded him of that other time back at church. Eva noticed that it was getting late and suggested they should stay at her friend's place nearby, which Yuma didn't mind until he saw the place, a haunted house. Of course, he was reduced to a nervous wreck again, but Eva seemed pleased. She even said it looked more popular than ever. Just then, they were greeted by an old guy in a suit who welcomed them with a bow. The old man was more than willing to send them to their room, and while walking through the haunted hallways, her MC could only look down due to the insane amount of monsters that filled the place. He didn't have to bear it long anyway because they reached their rooms soon enough, which looked like a pretty posh place for a hotel. Little did Yuma know a keen set of eyes had been staring at him from the darkness ever since he stepped foot in the room. but his main concern right now was that there was only one bed. Eva tells him that she's got her own casket, but she's willing to share it with him if he wants to, which Yuma quickly rejects. After all the fuss, he settled on the bed when he felt something unusual under the covers. When he checked to look, he saw a pair of glowing eyes and the ghost of a smile, which left him screaming for his life. The next morning, the creature revealed itself to be a fluffy ghost that had taken a liking to Yuma, who hadn't slept a wink last night. According to him, this ghostly creature has been following him all morning, and from the looks of it, it'll most likely follow him outside too. So does this put his adventurer dreams to an end? Not quite, because the butler from before creepily appeared from behind and told him to use a spirit stone, which is used to house spirits. Well, in theory, it should also work for ghosts, so it's like he has the ghost in tow, like a guardian spirit. Yuma wasn't too excited about that idea, but it was his only option, so what else could he do? With his friendly ghost finally settled, Yuma went straight to the guild to register as an adventurer. All eyes are on them thanks to Eva, but thankfully he was able to register quickly. The concierge tells him to bring his adventurer card whenever he sells or buys monster parts, but all Yuma can think about is that he can finally start earning good money. Just then, two men from a different party approach Eva, telling her to ditch Yuma and join them instead. But the pureblood flat out refuses them, saying she's the devoted type as she walks towards Yuma. Not that it matters, because now they're off to the dungeons. Eva and Yuma went straight to the nearest dungeon, and it didn't take long before monsters swarmed them on sight. Unfortunately for them, Eva's a beast herself and wiped them out in one go. She's even happy that they came and attacked her first. While celebrating her win, Yuma started appraising her skills and configuring a few things before she went out to take a look around. Yuma stayed behind, saying he'd collect the drops but made sure to remind her not to use her wings, and as he turned to look at their loot, he was surprised to see the friendly ghost was already out. It's all good though, because the little guy just wanted to help out a little. They managed to sort things out quickly, with our MC pleased that they'll be good for a while once they sell their goods. He still couldn't believe everything that happened, but at least he was not alone anymore. Suddenly, Yuma was bound by ropes from God knows where it came from. Blatant kidnapping in broad daylight. Moments later, Eva walked back with a few monsters in tow, when suddenly she felt another presence and managed to evade an attack from behind. Upon landing, Eva questioned her enemy where Yuma was, but instead of an answer, she was rewarded with a laugh from the hooded figure from before. This loony expected this much from a pureblood vampire, so now he unleashes a new weapon in the form of a small kid. In a flash, the kid was already all over her with speedy attacks, and from the looks of it, Eva deduced that he was a kid. Just then, she saw markings on the kid's arm just as he landed a blow to her stomach. This kid is an undead with holy magic. Her struggles didn't end there, because now Eva's movements are sealed with high-level restraints. Unknown to her, Yuma was actually strapped to a nearby tree and saw it all unfold just as the old loony enjoyed seeing Eva struggle. Seeing that there was something wrong with Eva, Yuma became restless and was just wondering if he could release himself from his binds, what had actually happened. He fell to the ground with a thud but quickly got back up to use his newly discovered magical powers on Eva. As soon as he thought about it, Eva's restraints were dispelled, and he proceeded to jump in and shield her from the oncoming attack. As soon as they were out of harm's way, Yuma quickly checked if she was alright, and given how his magic was still unstable, he proposed an idea for her. Rather than feeling astounded at Yuma's idea, Eva is even more surprised that it was Yuma's magic that saved her earlier. Well, so far the only magic that he believes he can do is teleportation and a barrier, all while the loony from before was left wondering how Yuma managed to teleport himself right next to Eva. Not that any of those matter, because he ordered the kid and the ghoul to attack our two MCs again. Eva quickly grabbed Yuma and jumped out of the way and was about to put more distance between them when the loony creep activated a magic barrier that could withstand physical attacks. From the looks of it, their enemies are well prepared to keep them intact. Just as the old fart threw a small vial at the ghoul kid, he bit into it, and as soon as he did, his attack became even more powerful since it was a higher level of holy magic. Well, it's still not smart enough to hurt them because Yuma blocked it off with his magic. He's getting there, but he still hasn't fully grasped his teleportation skills yet and needs a wee bit more concentration, which is practically a luxury given how they're in the middle of a fight. Eva's not too worried about it though, and if anything, she finds him even more interesting. From what Eva saw, Yuma is using ancient magic, which relies purely on intuition. unlike the current magic which needs to be studied for use. It's pretty obvious since his magic circle doesn't have any seals or symbols on it, and with that, she encourages him to visualize what he wants to happen with his will. Meanwhile, the bigger ghoul catapulted the kid straight to our MC, and seeing his enemy up front, all Yuma could think was that he didn't want to get hurt. Right before the kid could reach him, Yuma teleported the hand to zap himself from above. The kid fell to his knees but didn't collapse, and that's when Eva realized that the old fart committed the ultimate taboo by making the poor kid not only an undead who uses holy magic, but also resistant to it. As confirmation to this assumption, the old fart was even pleased with Eva's deductions and said that he was surprised when the church handed over the kid to him. From what he sees, Yuma doesn't have any idea how magic works in their world, so he does the honors of explaining it. In their world, magic can originally only be performed by magical beings. The magic powers humans use are borrowed from spirits and divine beings, so you can say that human magic is incomparable to the original magic. The old fart added that because of that inferiority, the church created the kid, a monster that's loyal to humans. It's a weapon that can use magic against its fellow monsters. There's just one question. How was the church able to create such a powerful ghoul? The answer is that they turned them into ghouls while they were still children. Hearing that sent shivers down Yuma's spine, and it even made him angrier that the old fart sounded so proud when he said that. How can he sound so happy, sacrificing children like that? But the old fart corrected him. They weren't sacrifices, since they were all orphans who were thrown away. The church decided to take advantage of that fact and use them. Yuma thought that the man in front of him may look like a human, but deep inside, he really was a monster. And even Eva frowned upon this old fart. She says that alchemy which distorts reason is taboo. And although she's aware that the church is creating chimeras by stealing magic, this one has gone too far. The old fart scoffs at her views, saying that they're archaic, while Yuma pulls her aside to talk. They were only given a few moments before the old fart ordered the kid to attack them again. The kid started to power up a beam from his hand and fired at Yuma and Eva, who transported right on top of the former. Eva used her mind control on him while Yuma executed his force block skill, instantly rendering the child unconscious. Now the old fart started to worry, asking them what they just did, but Yuma simply told him that they were taking the kid with them. Right before they left, our MC unleashed the kid's attack underneath the old fart and the rest of the other ghouls, which knocked them out cold. Now that they're out of harm's way, Eva feels that their first day at the dungeon is quite a bummer, but at least they fetched unexpected loot. Initially, she was surprised that Yuma wanted to take the kid with them, but she found it interesting, which is why she was on board. But what's next? Rather than answer her, Yuma collapsed wordlessly to the ground. Yuma woke up with a little ghost nuzzling next to him, feeling disoriented when he saw Eva walking in with a basin of water and a piece of cloth. She asks him how he's feeling, so he tells her that his memory's a little foggy just as he places the wet towel over his head. Surprisingly, it smelled good, and Eva said the master of the house prepared it for him. She also fills him in on how he fainted after their fight at the dungeon, which she finds surprising since Yuma's an immortal after all. She sits right next to his bed, explaining how a massage is the best for mental fatigue, stripping him of his top as she says so. But yeah, that's a no, as our poor boy covered up quickly. Well, we could have seen a different kind of action, but Eva didn't seem to be sour about it, so she just told him that she'd head to town for a little shopping. Upon hearing that, flashbacks of what just happened occupied Yuma's mind, leaving him a bit worried. So he tells Eva that it might still be dangerous to go out there. But it was the butler who answered him. The older man assured him that the town is pretty strict when it comes to altercations within their walls. So as long as they're within town, there won't be any problems. With that said, Eva left Yuma under the little ghost's care, who was more than happy to oblige her. With Eva gone, Yuma turns his attention to the kids sleeping in front of him. Taking him with them was an impulsive decision on their part, and now that he thought about it, Yuma was the real target of the church. As long as they're with him, it means he's putting Eva and the kid in danger, which leaves him feeling troubled. The butler was quick to notice his disposition, asking our MC if something was troubling him, and Yuma admitted that he was worried. The church is going to be hot on his trail from now on, and although he's thankful for Eva's company, he couldn't bear the idea of her being caught by them. The butler eased his worries, telling him that his companion was an incredibly cheery disposition. True to what the older man said, Eva waltzes around town happily without a care in the world. Left and right, the vendors call out to her. She just picked up a few goods when she overheard a couple of adventurers stressing over a pack of direwolves in the forest. One of them even instructs the others to assemble all the adventurers of the guild at once, with the pack being led by a bigger direwolf. While the men were busy gathering other adventurers, Eva proceeded to walk in the direction of the forest, catching one of the men's attention. He warns her not to go since it's dangerous, but she only thanks him with a smile before disappearing. He tried to go after her, but the other stopped him, and with that, the castle gate closed. Meanwhile, back in the forest, one of the adventurers said was true. There indeed was a large direwolf, and it was currently towering over a boy and a girl. The creature moved quickly, making the boy's sword fly off. And just when it was about to sink its fangs in him, the blade flew back and missed the wolf by a hair's breadth. Seeing the animals were startled by what just happened, the boy told his companion to make a run for it, while the leader of the pack started to sniff the air. With just one whiff, he instantly knew that a vampire had come their way, praising Eva for her bravery. However, he asserts that he has been the forest master for the last 400 years, and he intends to expand his territory by destroying the human settlements ahead. With that, his underlings dash straight to Eva, only to end up diced real good in one fell swoop. With menace lacing her voice, she warns the young direwolf not to get ahead of itself just as she starts to shapeshift into one. The leader of the pack stands silently as Eva tells the creature that her companion is currently resting in the town ahead, and then proceeds to tower over the arrogant direwolf. The latter now has his ears folded, staring up as it realizes that it's facing a 1,000-year-old pureblood. Without another word, the leader of the pack turned tail and was followed by the others. Now that the threat is gone, Eva returns to the town just as the adventurers manage to gather a few other men. The man from before was surprised to see that she was unharmed, with Eva casually telling them that the wolves were just passing by before she went back to the haunted mansion, all in a day's work. Back at the mansion, Yuma looks over the kid, wondering if the latter will always be like this. Furthermore, will he continue to be like this without a master? Our MC worries that the kid might start to decompose if he doesn't eat, stroking his head gently. Just then, the butler told him that Yuma could be selfish if he wanted to, if he felt that his feelings were becoming a little too much to handle, which doesn't really explain anything, and with that, he excused himself. Soon enough, Yuma fell asleep right next to the kid, and Eva carried him quietly when she got back. Later on, the butler came knocking, informing them of tonight's supper, when he noticed a white feather flower on the floor. Picking it up, he remembers that it helps relieve fatigue and depression, and in floriography, it means praying for one's happiness. Looking up, he sees Yuma, Eva, and the kids sleeping peacefully together, adorned with white feather flowers, while the little ghost sleeps on top of them. The night was dark, but so was the gas-like miasma emanating from the forest. The crows were restless, flying about just as a trio of adventurers hurriedly ran away from the approaching horde of the undead. The leader of the group stopped in his tracks, frustrated as he slashed one of the zombies, but there was no end to them. Tired and injured, the mage also shares the same frustration since this was supposed to be a simple scouting mission. Just then, all three of them felt something even more sinister from behind. As they turned around to see, they weren't prepared to see a lich leading the crowd of the undead glaring down on them. The crows still dominate the sky, even at the haunted mansion, and one of them lands right at the butler's office. There was a letter attached to the crow's foot, which he read and hummed in agreement. Meanwhile, Eva finds a way to dress up the kid and excitedly shows him off to Yuma, until his right arm falls off. This left our MC distraught, while Eva casually tried to attach it back, but with no success. Yuma panics, asking her what to do next since the kid's body isn't regenerating like before. But Eva points out that it's no surprise because his cells are already dead. Just then, the butler knocks at their door, asking if now is a good time. But Eva and Yuma are too busy patching up the poor kid, who's pretty much a mummy by now. Tea was prepared soon after, with Eva praising Davis T. So yes, we finally have a name for the Haunted Mansion's butler. Now, to more important matters. Davis tells them that he received a report saying a group of undead were rampaging in the eastern mountains, led by a powerful lich. At least Yuma's familiar with what a lich is, remembering the term as King of the Undead. Eva's pleased with the report, seeing it's exactly what they need right now because judging by the thick miasma filling the forest and the horde of the undead inside it, a high-class lich is the one behind it. With the lich now within their proximity, Eva says they can now override the ghoul's control authority on the kid. Davis adds that the kid has no master currently, so they aren't able to override the high-grade control authority magic used on him. The only concern Yuma sees in this is that the lich will become the kid's new master, but Eva only smiles, saying that she'd never let that happen. As it stands, it's possible to transfer the control authority from the lich to them, which is why she plans to have the lich cooperate with them. In this case, she plans to hold the control authority over the ghoul. If not, well, good luck to that lich. With that, they set out to find the King of the Undead, but Davis hands a letter to Yuma, asking him to hand it over to their informant. The older man explains that it's a letter of introduction and adds that they should be careful since there are a lot of venomous insects in the eastern mountains. For Eva, it's no cause for worry because they'll be flying to the location, something Yuma is not too fond of. True to her word, Eva flew to the eastern mountains while carrying Yuma, and soon enough, they were able to locate the dark miasma from above. Suddenly, the little ghost popped out of Yuma's pendant and flew elsewhere. It stopped and looked around before zooming straight to the forest, where a lone, long-haired figure was walking. It was their informant. Eva and Yuma got down, with the latter running to thank the informant only to pass out when he saw that the woman had no eyes. He fell on his butt out of fear, but Eva's more than pleased to know that their informant is actually a banshee. She gave the latter the letter from Davis and reported the events that happened since then. The banshee began by saying the forest is currently held as a nest of the undead where everything rots. The humans have already deemed the place dangerous, so they no longer send in adventurers, with the situation so much worse since even the other undead find the whole predicament harmful. The more miasma it emits, the more power the undead gain, but it also comes with a price. The lower grade undead suffers the most pain, which is why the banshee bows her head and asks the two to save them. Yu is surprised by this show of humility, but Eva tells her that they didn't go there to save them since their target is the lich. However, Eva tells the banshee that they can do something about the miasma for them. The banshee only tells her that they can only go on foot from there and wishes them luck, so the two do as she instructs. Soon enough, everything became too much for Yuma, who started gasping for air because of how the miasma was affecting him. Seeing him struggle, Eva shapeshifted into a wolf and had him ride on her back so that it would be easier for our MC. As soon as he mounted her, Yuma couldn't help but feel giddy at how soft her fur was. But it got cut short since Eva meant business starting now. With Yuma on her back, Eva runs through the forest like a gust of wind, but soon enough she stops in her tracks, annoyed at how the miasma is ruining her sense of smell. Looking back at the little ghost, she wonders if the little guy could help them by leading the rest of the way. The little ghost was happy to help them, leading them ahead. Soon, Eva knew they were on the right track with the frequent appearance of the undead popping out here and there. Seeing them mindlessly walking like that, Yuma asks her if the little ghost won't end up like the undead too, but Eva assures her that their little friend is more akin to a sprite, so it won't be affected by the miasma at all. After a couple more strides, the surroundings start to become sinister, and soon enough, Eva finds the lich standing just a few feet away from them. The King of the Undead was standing with their backs to them, facing a group of ghouls just as Eva asked if they could talk a little. Without turning, the lich already knew she was a high-rank vampire and told her off since he didn't have any business with her kind. Knowing Eva, she won't take no for an answer, so now that they've tried the civil way, it's time to use force, which she kicks off by firing at the lich. A large explosion followed soon after, but when the smoke cleared out, they saw the ghouls create a barrier by surrounding the lich and becoming his shield. Eva didn't give him time to counter because she decided to creep behind him, but the lich managed to block her sneak attack. Seeing her up close, now he remembers her and knows that she's the insatiable pureblood, which made Eva turn serious. After putting some distance between them, she comments how she hates the name, but the lich was now looking at her in a different light. If anything, he's honored that someone of her caliber took the time to visit him. Capitalizing on the moment, Eva asks if the King of the Undead now feels like talking, but he refuses beings who willingly chose the path to become a monster. What he said struck a nerve because now Eva unfurls her wings and summons her bloody servants from the shadows. The dark entities dash straight to the lich, but he uses a barrier of ghouls as a shield again, just like last time. While her pets were busy trying to reach the lich, Eva unleashed an explosive, fiery attack toward the latter, which was enough to blow Yuma away for a bit. However, it had no effect, And that's because the Lich used black magic, death summon, and called forth a large undead dragon, as if he couldn't get any cooler than that. Ooh. Eva eyed the winged creature with interest, while Yuma was quick to notice that the dragon was preparing to fire at her. Before the dragon could fully charge, Yuma put a magic shield around him right before the attack, coming in with a clutch save. Yuma thought that he didn't want to become a burden to others, which is why, as much as possible, he wanted to help out as much as he could. The fight continued mid-air with the Lich attacking while Yuma put a protective barrier around Eva. It didn't take long for the King of the Undead to realize that our MC was using ancient magic, much to his annoyance, which is why he decided to deal with Eva's sidekick first. Eva was quick to return to Yuma's side though, and while they were quite at it, somewhere else in the eastern mountains, some other entity was starting to stir. The Lich felt its presence, turning to see the direction of where it was, but Eva used this chance to launch consecutive attacks on him until the undead dragon started to intervene. That's where she's mistaken, because rather than fight back, the Lich and his dragon flew off, prompting the pureblood to fly off too to chase them. Our poor wingless Yuma was left on the ground, so he had to catch up to them on foot. En route to where they are, he fumbles along the forest, but thankfully the little ghost is guiding him along the way. Finally, they reach the large bottomless hole where Yuma squats right next to. He wants to take a peek so bad, but it's way too scary for him. Besides, it's starting to get chilly in the area, and he's huddling himself for warmth. It's even come to a point where he's starting to get goosebumps. That's when he noticed the little ghost staring at something, and when he turned to look, he found himself eye to eye with a giant baby Darth Maul. Yuma sat frozen on the ground, unmoving as he remained in a locked gaze with a giant zombie baby. It has a large mouth on top of its head, emitting miasma. Their staring contest would have continued if it weren't for Eva, who finally joined him. The pureblood casually tells him that he lost sight of the Lich, and is even puzzled because it looked like Yuma has seen a ghost, with the latter complaining that it was because she left him behind. Trivial matters aside, she finally acknowledges the elephant in the room, which is the giant baby. Now she understands where all that miasma is coming from. She deduced that the giant baby was made up of jumbled, unique auras that produced the miasma that covered the forest. While looking at the giant baby, Eva pieced together that this was the Lich's objective all along. Yuma couldn't fathom why, and that's when she explained that with the amount of miasma the baby was emanating, the King of the Undead can easily take over the next town or two as long as he has the undead creature in tow. Hearing that just made Yuma filled with dread when suddenly the Lich appeared, still annoyed at the two's interference. Yuma asked him up front why he created the monster and what he could obtain by doing so, but the Lich only said that he was not the one who made the poor creature. As he said so, he activated his staff, and along with it were small stone sculptures that he strategically placed within the forest. Suddenly, a large seal enveloped the sky just as the Lich told him that he was out there to seal the monster. A strong gust of wind blew, and as it did, the giant zombie baby shell started to disintegrate, revealing a couple of children's souls stored within. The children flew directly to the Lich, hovering over him before they all got absorbed inside his staff. Looking at the King of the Undead right now, Yuma couldn't help but feel pleased and sad about what happened. The Lich uttered a few words, wishing the souls to find eternal rest within him, and turned his back to walk away. Just then, our hero called out to him, telling the Lich that he had a request, and began to explain about the kid in their care who was turned into a ghoul at such a young age. He spared no detail, saying that the kid was created by the church and will soon rot away because he has no master. When suddenly, the Lich pointed his staff at Yuma. That startled our hero since he was just telling the undead creature that they wanted him to overwrite the control authority. But all the Lich asked was if it were all true, because if not, he'd be in big trouble. Seeing how serious the Lich is, Yuma stood firm, telling him that it's all true and that's all the Lich needed to hear before telling our MC to show him where the kid was. Meanwhile, back at the church, everybody's been pretty busy, but the creepy glasses guy from before is talking to someone in the shadows, with the latter informing him that things are going as planned. The glasses guy seemed pleased and instructed the figure to wait for the signal, when suddenly, a father-daughter duo approached him. What do you know, this creepy guy is actually a priest. At least that's what the father said as he thanked the former for the medicine they gave to his daughter. In turn, the daughter also said her thanks when suddenly they heard someone telling them to watch out. All three looked in the direction of the voice just in time to see a monster get skewered by icy blades from the ground. saved by the bell thanks to Takuya and his sister, with the former urging them to evacuate the shelter. His sister reports that she's done purifying the toxins because it turns out they've been slaying monsters left and right. The creepy priest applauds them for their efforts, happy with how much they've been ridding the town of all these monsters. Kotomi didn't seem pleased and looked away. Sensing her change in attitude, the creepy priest told the trio that they had information on where Yuma was being held. That got Kotomi up, but he was quick to remix the story, telling them that Yuma's under the control of a terrible vampire. Takuya assumed that it was Eva, the one who took him away that night, while the creepy priest egged them on about Eva's fighting skills and mind control ability. With all that said, he warns them that it may be hard to retrieve Yuma, which is why the church plans to send in reinforcements to help them. However, Keita was strongly against it, declaring that he'd be the one to fight Eva. Remembering their last encounter, he got all fired up, muttering about how he'd get her for what she did last time, and with that, he told the siblings that they should head out. At the haunted mansion, every single monster felt restless seeing Yuma and Eva walk in with a lich following them, the tension apparent in the air. Soon they reached the kid who was still sleeping soundly, as if his life were not in danger. Upon seeing the child, the lich fell to his knees and apologized to the former, saying that it was all his fault. As it turns out, the lich and this child have a shared history and go way back, sharing his story with Eva and Yuma. Flashback to many years ago when the Lich was still alive, kicking, and an Ikemen. It was revealed that the King of the Undead formerly served the nation as an esteemed magical instructor. Famous as he was cold and aloof, stable Ikemen attitude, who was dedicated to his work. One day he was walking through the hallway when he saw a child squatting right beside a flower bed in the garden. Curious as to what the other was doing, he approached the child, asking what he was doing, but the latter only stared back at him. That's when the magical instructor realized that this was one of the orphans taken in by the church. He looks over to the flower bed and sees some of the flowers that have wilted. So, using his magic, he revives one to life, making the child's eyes twinkle before thanking him with a smile. He ruffled the child's hair, and the other kids, seeing what transpired, decided to join him then. A few days later, the instructor was walking through the corridor when he noticed a lit lantern near the unused warehouse. He decided to check it out and was shocked to see the others experimenting on a child. He felt sick to the stomach seeing how the others cut the child's arms off, when suddenly the creepy priest from before appeared again. The latter felt disappointed since they wanted to work longer with the magical instructor. After all, it was his research that made all of this possible. Before he could reply, the creepy priest knocked him out with his magic and he collapsed, feeling resentment at this betrayal. Now filled with anger, he decided to take matters into his own hands by wreaking havoc on the facility. But soon enough, he was outnumbered and defeated by the others. His body was thrown in a pit where the other children were buried, adding more shock and resentment to the church he served. Before he died, he caressed the cheek of one of the children from before, feeling bitterness until the end. Time passed and the former magical instructor came to life as a lich, revived by his mana and grudge. But it came with a price. As he awakened, so did the children who turned for the worst, becoming the giant zombie baby he put to rest earlier. Back to the present, the Lich wraps up his story by saying he already put the children to rest, and now it's this kid's turn. He raises his staff and overwrites the control authority in no time at all, with Yuma thanking him in relief. Eva finally spoke up and asked the Lich to transfer the control authority to her, then asked Yuma how they planned to feed the kid. Well, our hero decided to commit to it and use his immortal self to help the kid out, with Eva impressed at how dedicated he is to all of this. Our MC is a softie after all, and he couldn't fight it in himself to just abandon the kid, something Eva's well aware of, given that's what he did when he first found her. Now back to the Lich. The pureblood asks him again to hand over the control authority, but the King of the Undead refuses, earning a big half from Eva. And that's not all. He even said that he'd hold on to the authority and ordered Eva to give Yuma to him. Right now, silence enveloped the room as the tension was high in the air, with the Lich and Eva having a stare down. Yuma stood clueless in between them, low-key panicking at whatever the heck was happening. When Eva spoke, her voice was laced with annoyance, telling the King of the Undead that what he said was a pretty bad joke, but the latter didn't back down, asking the pureblood if she was that old as she struggled to hear clearly. Now, that comment struck a nerve, the tension in the air rising once more until Yuma intervened and asked the Lich if he knew the kid. In a quiet voice, he admitted to Yuma that he knew the kid, but Eva didn't see why it was relevant to handing Yuma over. The King of the Undead told her that an immortal human is an invaluable asset, then turned to Yuma, saying that the amount of flesh and bone the kid needs to consume would decrease because of him. Plus, the Lich also mentioned that he studied ancient magic in his past life, so if Yuma chooses to go with him, he can teach our MC everything he knows. The Lich believes that being with him will be far more beneficial for Yuma than sticking with Eva, incurring the anger of the pureblood even more. But before she can go on a full rant, Yuma asks the Lich if he wants to come along with him instead. Obviously, it was a hard no for the Lich, the room getting all rowdy with their group, oblivious to what's happening outside. Just then, Davis hears a soft knock on the window pane, recognizing it as a signal that an intruder is within their vicinity. Davis increased the smoke screen, knowing that outside, the 3 other chosen children were the intruders. Takuya commented how the fog had gotten thicker, but Kotomi easily blew it away with her high-level air magic, revealing the haunted mansion before them. Seeing that their cover is blown, Davis informs Eva and Yuma that they have visitors, with our MC quickly heading to the window to see if they're from the church. He sees that it's Keita and the rest, feeling all stressed out that all 3 came at the worst possible moment. Just then, an idea struck him, informing Eva and the Lich of what he had in mind. There was a moment's silence, and suddenly, 2 powerful creatures went outside to face the 3 chosen children. With a sinister grin, Eva tells the King of the Undead that whoever pulls Yuma's idea first wins, while our MC hid behind the window. Back to the fight, Takuya is surprised at the appearance of the Lich, instructing his sister to provide support for them. Keita made the first move, hell-bent on getting back at Eva, striking her with his high-level pyro magic and burning her to a crisp. He thought he already won, seeing how fire is an effective countermeasure against the undead. So imagine his surprise when Eva spoke behind him, telling him that what he hit was just a decoy. Being her petty self, Eva even taunts Keita, saying it's the second time she managed to creep behind him, which rattled the other. Takuya saw Keita losing his cool, but before he could intervene, the Lich told him that he'd be his opponent. Losing no time at all, Takuya unleashed his high-level glacial magic and trapped the King of the Undead in an icy forest. However, the Lich easily got out of it using his Death Summon Poison Slime, noting how ice is useless when it's melted. Just then, the Lich noticed Kotomi and told her that he'd take her on too, unleashing an attack from behind, but she was able to block it off with the help of the Dryad. The Lich clicked his tongue at the failed attempt when he suddenly saw something moving from his periphery. It was Takuya, pissed as heck, telling the King of the Undead that it was a bad move to go after his sister. Meanwhile, Yuma remained inside the mansion, observing the fights from afar. Suddenly, one of the undead slammed against an invisible barrier in front of him. Startled at what just happened, Davis quickly explained that the mansion's defenses from inside the house are pretty strong. Despite that, Davis excuses himself to tend to other matters in case they need to up the protection within the mansion. Yuma apologized for dragging the older man into all this mess, just as Davis told him that it was still possible for spirits to squeeze in and enter the mansion from the outside. With a bow, he tells Yuma to keep his guard up, not noticing the small stem emerging from the window. Back to the fight, Takuya struggles to keep up with the Lich, acknowledging that this is a power he has never faced before. He catches a glimpse of Keita, who was also showing signs of distress. From the looks of it, his companion won't last much longer. Suddenly, a big tree sprouted from the ground and Kotomi emerged from the woody trunk. She tells her brother that they have accomplished their objective and it's time to go, turning to Keita and Eva. He unleashed an ice attack, forming a barrier between the two, and grabbed Keita by the shoulder, but the latter refused to back down. Takuya talks some sense into him, telling the hothead that they'll get back at them at another day. Still infuriated at their need to escape, Keita curses at the ground and unleashes another high-level pyromagic, the Phoenix. The figure of the mythical bird towered over them, making their exit, just as Eva called him out for turning tail when they were the ones who picked a fight. Keita talked back, vowing to take her out next time before they disappeared in a flash. Eva and the Lich are now left alone, with the former annoyed as heck but also feeling a little pitiful since she wanted to brainwash Keita when he was about to go all out. The Lich scolded her for her intentions, saying Yuma's idea would have been thwarted if she used mind control. She clapped back and called the Lich out. For all she knew, the King of the Undead wanted to turn his opponents into puppets at one point during the fight. Eva was about to suggest a new strategy when she felt it. Yuma was already gone. From the inside, there was a small crack on the floor with a budding stem. As it turns out, spirits can enter the house just as Davis said earlier. The Lich and Eva saw the sprout that broke through the floor, with the former recognizing that it was one of Kotomi's techniques. Meanwhile, Eva's already zoned out, her eyes gleaming with an intent to make Kotomi suffer when she makes a slave out of her. Just then, Davis reminded her of her agreement with Yuma. Flashbacks to a moment before the fight, Yuma told his undead companions that the people outside were probably looking for him. which prompted the Lich to ask if they were with the church. Our MC was quick to deny that they weren't, well, at least not quite, which is why he wanted to find out what was going on and ask them directly. Eva was more than happy enough to handle it, and besides, she could blow off a little steam, which prompted Yuma to say that they should take it easy on them. The Lich doesn't understand why they should, since they're enemies, asking Yuma for a reason, and the latter simply tells them that the outsiders arrived in the same summoning ceremony as him. They're the only reminders he has his own world, which is why he wants to resolve things as peacefully as possible. Back to the present, Davis reminds Eva again not to forget Yuma's feelings regarding this whole ordeal, but Eva only narrowed her eyes at the older man. Davis already knew that Yuma would be taken. In reply, the older man simply told her that spirits are also welcome in their building like their other guests. Eva let it go and told the Lich that they should just go and save Yuma. Again, the King of the Dead expressed his wish to take wardship of Yuma if ever he found him first, but Eva didn't want to hear any of it and told him to shut up. Somewhere else, a group of bandits are ganging up on a small party of adventurers. One of the bandits was even scoffing at how these adventurers were all weak just for Eva to send him flying with a kick. Surprised at her appearance, the bandits tried to fight back, but they were no match for the pureblood, knocking them out cold in an instant. 3 adventurers sat frozen, witnessing how this beautiful woman wiped out their attackers. They were just about to thank her, but Eva didn't want that. What he wanted was to control them and work for her. The adventurers did her bidding and reported all the information they found about a church facility located in the northern town. The Lich said that the creepy priest might be involved if the coat of arms was a sealed building. Now that he mentioned the priest, Eva said that he hadn't seen any of them and asked the King of the Undead if they were strong. The King of the Undead told her that the Imperial Army was nothing to be concerned about, but there was a certain priest among them who he remembered for being powerful. This very priest excels in holy magic, and even the Lich admits that it could be a problem if they were to face him. Hearing him talk about another like that, Eva couldn't help but comment about how the Lich must have known this guy, but the King of the Undead just said that he knew him a little back when he was still alive. Enough about that, because now the Lich was wondering why Eva was willing to go this far for Yuma. He was well aware that the pureblood allowed herself to be caught and sealed in the cellars of the church. The Lich assumed that Eva had already given up on the world, but the latter just said that she was searching for something. The problem is, she doesn't know exactly what she's looking for, which is why she's holding on tightly to Yuma, because he's her first major lead so far. The Lich only hummed in response, but in his mind, he realized that all those things Eva did years ago were probably to look for that something, and that her infamous title, the Insatiable, was just for show. Back at the church facility, Yuma was beginning to stir in his sleep and open his eyes to see Keita and Takuya over his bed. Our poor MC even got Keita's last name wrong, earning a smack from the latter, while Takuya tried the hot head away from Yuma and apologized as he did so. Our MC was about to ask about Eva, the female vampire, but the mere mention of her was enough to trigger Keita's aggression. Takuya explained that it took everything in their power to get Yuma back in the facility, and added that someone from the church would come and check on him soon. Yuma cut him off and told Takuya that he was leaving, earning a deafening silence from the two. Keita quietly said that it looked like Yuma really was brainwashed, and that's when our MC told them that they were the ones being manipulated, asking them if they even knew what the church was doing behind the scenes. Keita told him that he could only believe the things he saw with his own eyes, and so far, what he saw were monsters terrorizing the poor people. He added that Yuma would get it once the church cleared his head of the brainwashing, while our MC remained silent. He wanted to counter what Keita just said, but no words were able to come out of his mouth. Somewhere else in the facility, voices were talking about how their summons, the monsters, were much better lately compared to the ones before. The previous ones lasted a mere 3 days before they died and became raw materials. One of the guys didn't care. For all he knew, these summons were just weeds they needed to pull out before they got out of control. Right now, he's busy with the Demon Lord forces and strengthening their subordinates, while another voice chimed in, reminding them of the pureblood vampire. The voice asked what the others intended to do with her, when suddenly a church member intervened and told him that the preparations were complete. With that, 3 new faces appeared, led by the powerful priest the Lich was talking about. This powerful priest smiled, proud that, as the agents of God's will, they welcome sacrifices of man for the sake of the world. Then there's Kotomi, standing outside the door clutching her hand as she overheard Yuma and the other two's exchange earlier. From the looks of it, she's determined to do something. Kotomi started sneaking around the facility with the help of her powers and was still thinking about what she overheard before. She knows Yuma was brainwashed, but seeing his reaction, Kotomi thinks something's off. And thank God their group has a girl. Women's intuition is never wrong. Back to more important matters, she finds herself in the library feeling overwhelmed by the amount of books present there. Looking at all these source materials, there's bound to be information about the monsters they're fighting, right? And yes, even information about the church too. She got to work and started flipping through the books, even taking time to choose different ones, but nothing really stood out to her. Just then, one of her dryads popped out, staring at a certain space on the shelf. She reached out to where the dryad was staring and felt a breeze, so she pulled one of the books. To her surprise, it revealed a hidden doorway, and yeah, she got a little hyped up since it was just like the movies. Kotomi composed herself and started to descend the dark corridor, thinking she might find the answers she was looking for. Back to Yuma and the other two, he decided to just play along for now to get a better understanding of the whole situation, just as one of the church members came to the room to fetch him. Keita got his eyes narrowed at Yuma's 3 escorts, and that's not all. They're armed too. Our hero trudged quietly, noticing that these 3 must have been tasked to guard him to prevent him from escaping. Soon, one of the guards led him to a door where a priest was said to be waiting for Yuma. As soon as he entered, he was welcomed with warmth by the powerful priest the Lich was talking about. The priest introduces himself as Richt, one of the high priests of the central church. Without further ado, he got right down to business and told Yuma that he knew our MC could use ancient magic. As soon as Richt approached him, Yuma activated a barrier on instinct, forgetting the fact that he was supposed to keep a low profile. Richt touched the barrier and noticed that its properties were a little different from the usual ones. Now, to the fun part, Richt wanted to see Yuma go on the offensive as he took the latter's spirit stone. The high priest also sensed that there was a spirit contained within the pendant, asking Yuma if it was his familiar. Rather than answer him, our MC tried to snatch it back using teleportation magic, but Richt was a lot faster. As if that was not challenging enough, Richt also broke through Yuma's barrier, commenting how our MC still doesn't know the full extent of magic. Based on his observations, Yuma purely relied on his feelings, which makes his magic fragile. So he suggests our MC put a lot more effort into retrieving his spirit stone. Now that baffled Yuma. Why was this priest giving him advice on how to handle his magic, prompting him to ask Richt? The latter simply told him that he was interested in ancient magic, which is why he figured he'd share a tip or two for Yuma. This just made Yuma all the more wary of him, but in the end he decided to heed Richt's advice and attacked him. The latter even urged him to counterattack, and just as Richt went on the offense, Yuma sent the priest's attack back to him multifold. Richt wasn't easily fooled and deduced that Yuma had just used illusion magic, right when our MC was just about to grab his spirit stone. That's where he was mistaken, because the first one was a decoy, and the real Yuma managed to snatch it back, though he did land unceremoniously face first on the floor. Richt was more than happy with the results and told Yuma that he needs to understand magic well before he can fully use it. After all, the magic RMC has is boundless. With that, the high priest did the honors of explaining the knowledge of their history. Their world is a microcosm of man, monsters, and gods. Both man and beast live in the world together, living harmoniously while the gods protect this balance between them. After all, the humans owe it to the gods because if it weren't for them, they would have been wiped out long ago because they were mere cattle to the monsters. In addition to that, humans didn't have any other means to defend themselves against the monsters, which is why the gods taught them how to perform summoning ceremonies. Out of all the monsters, the most terrifying of their kind is the vampire, especially the pure blood of Red, the very same vampire Yuma is currently traveling with right now. Rick tells him that Eva used to wreak havoc, decorating the land in crimson blood, hence the title Pure Blood of Red. The church, on the other hand, is an organization set on protecting humans from these monsters. However, even Rick is aware that they've taken actions a little too far with what they've did to Yuma. Even he couldn't believe that they had the guts to do something so horrific. He approaches our MC, promising that there will be atonement for what they did, and in exchange, he wants Yuma to join them. As soon as he heard that, the faces of the creepy priest and the loony guy flashed into his mind. He knew it was just a lie. All the pain and torture he endured back then for the sake of their experiments were a living nightmare for him. Yuma already knows the difference between the previous life he lived and the time with Eva, and for a bit he kind of understood what Keita meant back then. In the end, he turns down Rick's invitation and says that he's not the type to accept everything without explanation. Sure, he may come to regret his decisions later, but right now he wants to stay by Eva's side. Upon hearing that, the high priest felt disappointed, but he decided to give Yuma a parting gift. the truth about his powers. Rick says that out of all the summons he witnessed through the years, Yuma is the most special because he's the one personally chosen by the goddess herself. The very same goddess bestowed upon him the gift of immortality, but our MC is too clueless to know anything about all of this. He remembers hearing the priests tell them of their blessings when they first got here, but for him, he has never seen the goddess or whatever. Rick didn't seem to be bothered by Yuma's reaction because he understood that our hero was still unawakened. With that, he opens a small box and reveals a crystal tower with something etched on the front. He hands it to Yuma and says it's the key to unlocking his power. It can also help him understand why the goddess chose him, so he should opt to find out the truth by himself. The high priest adds that it's a gift, so there's no pressure on whether he should receive it or not, but in the end, Yuma takes it into his hands. Just then, one of the guards knocked and whispered something in his ear before proceeding to tell Yuma that he needed to go to attend to more pressing matters. Rick picks up his book and says he'll have someone send Yuma back to his room, but the latter stops him, asking if he could do anything about the human experiment since he's one of the top figures in the church. Rick tells him that he also has higher-ups to answer to, and those who believe that what they're doing is for the greater good. He can't exactly talk some sense into people like that. Hearing him say that, it seems that Rick's justice only extends to a certain degree because he won't stop his colleague from going on a rampage, which leaves the high priest quiet. In the end, Rick tells him that justice isn't that simple, and Yuma will come to understand this reality one day. But our MC stands firm on what he believes. This made the high priest smile, and he told Yuma that he'll see what he can do on his end while wishing our hero would continue forward. With that, Rick exited the room, followed by the other guard. The latter couldn't help but feel troubled, knowing the head priest would get mad, but Rick remained unfazed. In fact, Yuma gaining powers works to Rick's advantage, which is why he lets our MC go, regardless of what the head priest thinks. Back to Yuma, he stares at the crystal in his hand and concentrates his magic on it. Soon, a strong gust emanates from the object, instantly enveloping him while he's caught in a surprise. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the facility, two guards were talking about how the human strengthening experiments have gone too intense lately and that a big war is brewing. According to them, the higher-ups have been busy rounding up powerful people, but their conversation got cut short when a man and a woman appeared before them, saying they were there to answer an invitation. One of the guards looked at him quizzically, and that's when the masked man leaned over and whispered something to him, making the former let them pass instantly. You guessed it right, these two were none other than the Lich and Eva in disguise. The very reason they were sporting this is that they needed to sneak into the facility, with the Lich using illusory magic to make him look human. Despite the hassle, Eva's more than happy to do this again as long as she can do matching outfits with Yuma, while her companion continues walking silently, annoyed by her antics. They continued walking when suddenly Eva heard something from the corridor down the hall and felt a strange presence emanating from there. As for Keita and Takuya, the latter starts wondering where his sister has run off while also thinking about what Yuma said. It made him question why the undead would go as far as brainwashing Yuma, trying to find a good reason like using his powers, and asking Keita for his opinion. Instead of answering, the hothead was unusually brooding, which made Takuya make fun of him. Just then, Kotomi walked into the room, standing motionless while holding a stuffed teddy bear. Takuya approached his sister, asking where she went when she suddenly transformed and attacked the former, leaving both men in shock. Takuya was slammed to the far end of the wall, while Keita managed to evade her next attack. Seeing his companion pass out, Keita asked what was wrong with her, but she remained quiet. That was when he saw she was actually conscious, but there was something wrong. Kotomi used his hesitation and apprehended him using the vines, and just as she was about to deliver the finishing blow, Keita heard a familiar voice teasingly greeting him. It was Eva. Keita was beyond shocked why the pure-blood vampire was there, and not even a simple thanks for saving his butt. But Eva said he should thank Yuma, because she wouldn't have saved him if our MC wasn't worried about them in the first place. Eva turns her attention to the teddy bear on the floor, calling it out for playing pretend when the bear suddenly speaks. Suddenly, dark thread-like material oozes from the teddy bear until it takes the form of a man. As he transformed, he went on yapping about why a monster was there and how much he hates nuisances, but this just made Eva tease him a little bit more. Seeing his transformation, Keita knows this guy. It's the fourth priest from the church. But more important than that, why did he do that to Kotomi? The high priest got annoyed by Keita's yapping, but he did say that he started weeding out budding problems like them because they attract pests. But Keita couldn't understand it all. Instead of explaining further, the high priest tried to get Kotomi to attack them. Keita tried to do something, but his opponent reminded him that he was the one in charge right now. From the get-go, this priest had not only been watching them closely, he was also waiting for a chance to eliminate them. So when Kotomi came snooping around, the priest decided it was time to go and proceeded to attack Keita. Seeing him struggle, Eva used this chance to tease Keita again, asking him if he wanted Big Sister to help out. But Keita was already starting to doubt everything they did. Seeing him hesitate like that, the High Priest scoffed at him and told him that they were just playing heroes all along. It's what people like them to do when they really don't believe in their sense of justice. Hearing him say that, Eva commented that his way of thinking was disgusting and asked if all the priests were like him since it was their first time meeting one. She asks why this child, the priest, is acting all high and mighty against other children. The latter answered it's because all the other summons are worthless, save for the one chosen by the goddess. With that said, those that have no worth are just weeds, and weeds need to be pulled out, right? Eva couldn't help but laugh at his logic, praising him for being the cheekiest brat she'd ever met so far, then proceeded to smack Keita, telling him to clap back before pulling him aside. She asked Keita where his spunk has gone, but the latter still hasn't made a retort. Meanwhile, the High Priest deduced that she was the vampire they'd been hunting and made a mental note to smack the guards after this whole fiasco. Just then, the facility shook, catching them off guard, as the priest looked around and wondered if it had woken up now of all times. He left Kotomi to fight with the two and made a run for it while Eva stood disappointed that another man turned tail and ran from her. Well, she wanted to get this done quickly to see Yuma, so she used her special sight to see the thing that was controlling Kotomi. Eva grabbed Keita and lent him her eyes so he could see the pin on her nape. She explains that if Keita gets rid of it, Kotomi will return to normal, but to do that, he'll have to do something about her troublesome legs. The pureblood is already instructing him to burn those legs off with his pyro magic, because if she were to do it, there's no guarantee that there'd be anything left to identify Kotomi. Eva continues to evade Kotomi's attacks while giving out instructions, but Keita's still out of it. So she decides to grab him by the collar and act now if he doesn't want to regret things later. That snaps some sense into him, so Eva threw Keita straight at Kotomi, unleashing his pyro magic to burn it all off while Eva crept up behind her to pull the pin. As soon as she did, Kotomi lost consciousness, and thankfully, Keita managed to catch her before she fell to the floor. Now that it was all over, Keita thanked Eva in a quiet voice, while the former told him that he knew where to find them before walking out of the room. Keita could only apologize for being so weak, while Eva was busy thinking about how she thought she sensed Yuma there. It turns out he's not there, so could this be the work of someone? The aura in the facility is all muddled up, so it's difficult for her to pinpoint where he is and what the church is planning. Soon enough, she came across a door ajar and peeked in, surprised at what welcomed her sight, an unconscious Yuma being held by a giant hand in midair. Looking at it now, Eva finally remembers the condition for using magi: ancient magic. When Yuma opened his eyes, he found himself standing in a town somewhere, and despite his foreign surroundings, he found it somewhat familiar. Suddenly, he sees a group of townsfolk ganging up on a figure crouched on the ground, a monster. One of the townsmen was about to stab this poor creature with his pitchfork while angrily exclaiming that the former should leave town when Yuma tried to intervene and pull the man back. Unfortunately, his fingers just passed through the man, making our hero wonder if this is all a dream. If it is, he just wants to wake up and end it all. Just then, a large entity spouted out of thin air, caving over the creature in protection, like an oversoul, while the people fell back scared. Looking at this giant entity, Yuma knew this. But that's when he started to come to. Our hero is currently lying on Eva's lap, just as the pureblood asked if he had a good dream. Seeing her in that fit and position left him scrambling to get up, asking why he was sleeping in the first place. That's when Eva pointed out that thing over there, and it caused him to sleep. He looked to where Eva motioned and was shocked to see the giant floating hand. As soon as he looked at it, he froze and struggled to breathe. What was happening? It's like something got a death grip over his heart. Everything is painful, and his gaze is starting to get blurry when Eva approaches and hugs him silently. She tries to calm him down, telling Yuma to breathe slowly and telling him that the hand he's seeing is not an enemy. On the contrary, it's his ally. She tries to calm him down, assuring him that the pain will subside once he calms down, and once he does, the giant hand starts to disintegrate. Soon the hand was nothing but a wisp of smoke, just as Eva told him that the hand was something he summoned, much to his surprise. The pureblood tells him how she heard about a magi user who can use attributeless magic a long time ago. Wait, Was that the giant oversoul Yuma saw in his dream earlier? Now he asks her how he can use the Magi. In all sincerity, Eva tells him that he shouldn't even think about it because using the Magi is way ahead of all other types of magic. To do that, Yuma would have to go through hellish and dangerous trials. Instead of being deterred, Yuma became even more determined, asking Eva how he could get through it. There was a moment of silence before Eva told him that even if he couldn't use the Magi, he still had her, a pure-blood red, remember? But our hero has a good reason why he's hell-bent on using his own strength. All this time, Yuma has been running away because he's afraid of doing something. But now, if he doesn't face this, he knows he'll regret it for the rest of his life. Hearing him say that, Eva didn't judge him, but she did remind him that the trials are far more painful than what he experienced just now. Was he prepared to face all of that? With a fire in his eyes, Yuma said that he was intent on doing so. Meanwhile, in some other part of the facility, one of the guards has been knocked out cold while the Lich fumes over Eva. He can't believe that the pureblood just flew off after sensing Yuma, and she was the one who suggested they infiltrate the facility wearing costumes. The Lich stood there, turning as he talked smack about Eva. But on more important matters, he had already secured as much information as he could based on the paperwork he found on the desk. Based on his recent discovery, this building is no simple facility. There are many documents from different facilities compiled there, which is pretty off-putting. Checking the documents at hand, the King of the Undead just knows that they're trying to cover something up. But these documents are not enough to let him find out what their secret is. In the end, the King of the Undead used his powers to just ask the newly awakened staff to get better information, unveiling his true form as he did so. Soon enough, the Lich found himself in the deeper and more private part of the facility where the staff roamed about. Looking at them like this made him wonder if they were performing some kind of experiment when he suddenly found something big and ominous at the far end of the area. A Magi, all sealed and wrapped up. A million thoughts started running through his head. Why are they keeping something this dangerous right under the town streets? But now that he thought about it, it finally made sense why it was hard to detect any presence in the area, since it must be the church's ploy to keep the barrier up, keeping the Magi hidden. He turns to the staff he took hold of, complete with a skeletal figure clamping down on his head, ordering him to explain what's up in the facility. The poor guy was forced to detail how the Magi was found in the underground ruins 10 years ago. After some inspection, they discovered that the entity was a magicule eating Magi the Moon. Hearing all of that, the Lich remembered reading something about that back when he was still alive. Now it makes sense why the church wanted Yuma so bad, to gather all the Magi. The Lich asks the staff what the church plans to do with the Magi. The staff tells him that they intend to eat all the world's magicules and wipe out all the magical beasts. Once that's accomplished, then the world will finally belong to mankind alone. The King of the Dead asks if these were the orders of the head priest, but the latter reveals that it's actually from Richt Alba Lorenz, the first-rank high priest. He wasn't too surprised to hear that name. The Lich already had a hunch. After all, Richt is a man of sheer will who has a darkness so strong that it's enough to block out the sun. The first time he met Richt years ago, the Lich already felt that he was a dangerous man. Well, none of that matters anymore because the King of the Undead's current concern is the Magi of the Moon. But if the church's plan pushes through and all the magicules disappear, then it also means that the four great spirits of the season's powers will also disappear, making the whole world fall into ruin. The Lich felt gutted knowing this could happen, but then again, there was still a lot that he didn't know. Suddenly, he got distracted when he saw one of the staff walking toward him. The staff simply told him that the area was off limits to outsiders and asked the King of the Undead if he was there for the human strengthening program. But the more he looked at the dark-haired man, the more familiar he looked until it dawned on him who he was talking to, the great magical instructor from before. The Lich quickly apprehended him, slamming him against the wall, but the latter was actually happy to see him, commenting how not even death itself could stop the great magical instructor from coming back to life. Now the staff turns to him, somewhat manic, as he urges the Lich to offer themselves for the greater good. In a quiet voice, the Lich told his former assistant that he knew that the latter leaked his research to the church. Despite knowing that, the King of the Undead tells him to leave the church now while he still can, since their methods are nothing but poison for him. His former assistant laughed and told him that he was willing to bear a little poison if it was all for the greater good. His instructor should know that best, right? After all, He fought on the front lines, right? Instead of agreeing, the Lich awarded him with a sinister stare as his miasma oozed out of his body, telling his former assistant to be quiet. The Lich's miasma turns into a giant scythe. Just as he says he will free his former assistant, the young man couldn't even blink as the King of the Undead started slashing the stone pillars. Now that was enough to snap the young man back to his senses, who sat still, shocked at the destruction that was a hair's breadth from him. The Undead King spoke, reminiscing about how his former assistant was always the type that was too serious. The Lich told him that he must live strong and not lose himself if he wanted to save the world. Furthermore, he adds that the church is nothing like he imagined, warning the younger man that he'd only be inviting danger if he allowed the church to continue its run. Still, he showed care for the man and told him to leave now since the Lich was about to destroy the facility. But he didn't receive a reply from his former assistant. The once magic instructor kneeled before asking the other man if he knew a way out. The latter answered in a quiet voice that he did. As a final act of kindness, the Lich hands him a skull, a weak creature with no fighting abilities, and orders the younger man to take the creature to safety as his final order. With that, he ran off just as the King of the Undead finally unleashed his true form. Soon enough, wisps of miasma followed by the spirits of the undead sprang from the ground as they laid destruction over the facility. The other staff members started running like mice while others sounded the alarm. As his undead pets continued to wreak havoc, the Lich was contemplating what to do next. He couldn't move the Magi without waking it, but if he just destroyed the facility, he was pretty sure that the church wouldn't stop that easily. In the end, the Undead King decided to fill the place with a thick fog of miasma, rendering it impossible for any living creature to make its way in. However, before he could cast the spell, there was a swoosh of movement that encircled him before flying off to one of the high priests from before. The Lich recognizes the man as the church's third high priest, the puppet user. Without batting an eye, the Undead King warns him to give up already or die, adding that the Magi are not something the church should have. His warning fell on deaf ears because the priest didn't care whatever the heck may happen to the Magi. However, he refused to let pests run wild, irking the Undead King at how unreasonable the priest was being. Suddenly, he felt movement behind him, evading just in time as one of the Lich's undead monsters lunged toward him. But the monster's attacks didn't reach him. In a flash, he was slashed to pieces by one of his puppets. The Lich wonders if that puppet was enough to fight against the Lich's undead pests, but the priest expresses his disinterest in dragging the fight. With that, he activated his evil eye, and as soon as he did, some sort of magic flowed from his eye and covered his puppet that now adorned new armor. Now it's in battle mode and quickly dashed straight to the undead army. The doll wiped them all out in no time, but the Undead King remained calm as ever. Seeing how the puppet's magic increased as soon as the priest activated his magical eye, the Lich also launched his attack, but the priest activated his puppet's shield, easily deflecting the majority of the Undead King's attack, save for one swipe that nicked the doll's arm, which also reflected on the priest's arm. Seeing how he got injured, the Undead King couldn't help but ask the priest why he would use a type of magic that would also hurt himself. It was practically suicide. The priest only told him that he didn't care as long as it helped him reach his goal. Just then, his puppet appears right in front of the Lich. However, something crashed from the ceiling above, squashing the puppet just as the priest cried out in pain. Even the Undead King was startled as he saw a large hand. Could this be what he thought it was? Just then, Eva appeared, confirming his suspicions, and added that he was ready. Meanwhile, the priest struggled to stand straight, annoyed that things just kept getting worse for him. Looking at the giant hand in front of him, he couldn't believe that it was coming from the subject they were supposed to apprehend. Meanwhile, Eva tells the Lich to sit back and watch to see Yuma execute his resolution. Looking at the single-armed Magi floating right in front of them, the Lich comments that Yuma hasn't gone through the proper trials and might get into trouble if he's not careful, judging by how the Magi isn't fully formed yet. Eva assured him that the boy would be fine. After all, she, who is more capable than the goddess, was right there with Yuma. Flashback to earlier. Yuma expressed his intent on facing the trials just as Eva finally gave him the green light, but not before running a little test. This left our hero a little confused, so the pureblood explained that going overboard can get pretty dangerous, Not that it matters since this is the church's facility. Still, she assured him that she'd be there to reel him in case things got out of hand. Hearing her say that made his heart swell, catching him off guard as she used her nightmare skill on him. She taps her index finger on Yuma's forehead and tells him that the Magi responds to the strong hope of its users. With that said, she asks him what the worst outcome is for him. Yuma thought about it, and as soon as he did, he saw Eva collapse before him just as two figures, burned beyond recognition, told him to run. His nightmare has been activated, just as Eva holds him then. You see, according to the pureblood, while thinking about the worst outcome, the Magi's power will negate it. Back to the present, the Magi's hand still refuses to budge, but the priest manages to have his puppet escape from being squashed and attacks Yuma directly. However, the Magi were quick and hurled the puppet off right before it could slash our hero. Eva cheered seeing how our boy was able to fight it off, while in his mind, Yuma struggled to stay afloat and keep his consciousness intact. He could still hear Eva, but it's taking everything he has not to sink into the Magi's influence, which is why he decided to put all of his focus on the enemy. Right now, Yuma and the priest are at a standstill, while the Lich comments that their boy most certainly is controlling the Magi based on what just happened. Eva tells him not to get in the way and that it's their job as adults not to hinder his growth. The undead king heeds her no mind, saying that he's not as green as Yuma, just as he secretly secretes more miasma into the building. The fight between Yuma and the priest continued, and it was pretty obvious who was the more powerful one between them. Seeing the disparity, the priest, whose name was Eiji by the way, plucked something from his thigh, remembering how his sister reminded him that they made a vow to serve God and protect the people. Both siblings are patched up and in poor form, with his sister worse for wear, yet she was the one consoling him, so the young Eiji promises to become strong enough to protect her. He trains hard every day, but despite his hard work, he is one of the unfortunate ones who has a limit to his magical capabilities. As fate would have it, the creepy priest chanced upon him and gave him the artificial eyes, born from one of their studies to increase one's magical energy. This became his new source of power, along with the ideation that the summoned ones are nothing but outsiders. They're not the ones they're tasked to protect, which is why Eiji, along with a few others, took it upon themselves to do the deed without hesitation. But noble ambitions aside, it's all for his sister, at least the future that his elder sister hopes for. Back to the fight, Eiji threw a golden pin in the air, and as it elevated, magical energy emerged from the tip, covering him from head to toe in full armor. With this, the priest thought to himself that he should deal with the trash. Eiji didn't let up and continued attacking him relentlessly until he managed to sneak in a devastating blow to our boy, all while Eva commented on how he'd suddenly decided to join the fray. Eiji dashed straight to Yuma, but the Magi's giant hand was quick to block off his attacks. Eiji didn't let up and continued attacking him relentlessly until he managed to sneak in a devastating blow to our boy. Well, maybe if Yuma didn't have the powers of immortality, so in an instant, his body repaired itself. Seeing Yuma's immortal powers up close made the priest deem him inhuman, but all our hero could think about right now was that it was getting harder for him to respond to Eiji's attacks. He knows his consciousness is holding him back, and with one last glimpse at Eva, he finally surrenders to the Magi's influence and leaves the rest to her. Eva is surprised to see Yuma throw in the towel and surrender to the depths, while our hero starts to undergo physical changes as he lets the Magi take over his body. The Magi slowly started to envelop Yuma's body in armor, while Eiji braced himself while also taunting his enemy to do his worst. Now Yuma has the Magi's arm attached to his body, which is surprising even for Eva. She didn't know that the Magi could also change the user's appearance. Hearing her say that left the Lich a bit surprised, especially since the pureblood has been around for 1,000 years, and she's unaware of such things. Back when he was alive, the Lich remembered how they all searched and hoped for a Magi user to extend a helping hand and save humanity. They all believed that it was a thing of legends found in the old texts. With that, he turned his back and left everything to Eva, who said she intended to take care of everything else from here on out. Back to the fight, Eiji was the first to move, attacking Yuma with an obsidian-like tip, which our hero easily deflected, before twirling it and firing it back to Eiji. The priest parried his attack and then conjured more crystal-like blades from thin air, impaling Yuma in one swift move. Thanks to the Magi's powers, our hero was unarmed, tapping the huge block right next to him and pushing it with such force that it almost squished AG. The impact was so powerful that it shook the town above, with the block flying high into the sky as an injured AG coughed up blood. Now that he was exposed outside, AG couldn't help but worry about the open area. They were already outside, and if they kept fighting, it would harm everything his sister had worked hard for. He wasn't able to worry for long because Yuma appeared right in front of him, making AG fly off to have our hero chase after him. Yuma did as he hoped, while AG remembered that if he used the magical eye too much, it could take a toll on his body. Ironically, he doesn't have the luxury to think of such right now since he's fighting for his life. So with that, he decided to activate the term Magical Power Fortification. The instant power-up caused him to cough up blood again, but not only that, his veins also felt like they were about to burst. AG endured it, thinking he'll never reach Rick's level if he can't brave through this. Meanwhile, Yuma's physical form continues to deteriorate, and right now he looks more like a monster as he deems AG his enemy. Now the two fly straight at each other, meeting in an epic blow, but AG clearly struggles more. The priest tries to hold on a little longer, but Yuma wants him gone. Just then, AG's magical attributes faded just as he was about to come in contact with Yuma's Magi fist, hitting him head on. The impact made the priest fly off into the forest, rendering him weakened and immobile. However, Yuma wasn't satisfied and was about to strike a fatal blow, just when AG is about to lose consciousness, and then Eva's voice rang, telling him that it was too far. With just one hand, Eva came in clutch and stopped Yuma's Magi hand in midair, telling him that he'd get hurt if he kept at it. In a gentle voice, she tells him that it's time to go home. Yuma remained silent and his eyes remained zeroed in on the unconscious AG. Suddenly, his Magi hands began to lose form as they passed through Eva and attacked the unconscious priest. Thankfully, the pure blood was faster and was able to pull AG out of harm's way. All that fiasco stirred AG awake as he commented that Yuma could not be stopped. Furthermore, he thought a lot of people would die because of monsters like him. Hearing him say that, Eva's not too bothered as she let her hair down, telling him to watch how the pros do it. As if on cue, Yuma started to attack them again, but Eva blocked him. Our out-of-control hero was quick to swerve and get behind her, and even she couldn't help but comment at how fast he moved. She decided to fly off, putting some distance between them while thinking of what to do next. Just then, he saw the Lich, now too far from where she was, landing right next to him. The undead king was unfazed at her appearance, asking Eva what she wanted. His eyes widened as he saw Yuma changing form, landing right in front of them. Our hero couldn't discern him, so he just attacked the undead king, while the latter managed to block easily before turning to Eva, pissed because he remembers her saying she'd take care of it. Eva's annoyed too and tells him to help her by keeping Yuma's attention on him. The Lich quietly spoke, commenting about how he wanted to let him rest much longer, so he decided to summon the ghoul boy from before. Eva puts AG down, asking him if he really believes that Yuma can be skipped before reminding him that all three of them are undead, so they can't die. The kid ghoul grabs Yuma and pushes him off, but our hero manages to break free from him, breaking the former's arm in the process. Despite his broken arms, the kid holds on to Yuma's waist, but his Magi grabs hold of the other and throws him to the far-off distance. With no one to hold him back, Yuma flies straight to AG and stabs him straight in the chest. As blood starts to gush from the wound, a gentle touch taps on Yuma's face to reveal that Eva was the one he stabbed. She was using illusory magic. Eva calls out to him while our hero begins to regain his senses deep within his subconscious. The first thing our hero sees is the little ghost who leads him to a bright light where a long-haired girl stands with her back to him. He calls out Eva's name, to which the girl turns, extending her hand as she tells him that it's time to go home. Yuma didn't know which home she was referring to, but he grabbed hold of her hand as they started to walk forward. Meanwhile, in the real world, Yuma finally reverts to his human form in Eva's arms while the little ghost clings to his back. Yuma still feels weak from everything that had happened, but he tells Eva right before he loses consciousness that he feels like he's always known her. She didn't expect to hear something like that, but Eva also admits that the taste of his blood from where they made that pact was somewhat nostalgic to her. There are huge gaps in the pureblood's memory, but even so, she still welcomed him home, which Yuma appreciated. Soon enough, the Lich and the Ghoul appeared, and Eva commented on how our hero acted like a baby, falling asleep after all of that fuss. But the Lich had more pressing matters to think of, like the lunar magi the church was hiding. Though, to be fair, it was just a superficial shell. It did make Eva wonder just what the church was after. The Undead King replies that something is happening within the church itself, and urges Eva that they should leave before the reinforcements arrive. Upon hearing that, Eva asks if he was good to leave together, and there was a pregnant pause before the Lich turned, saying that he had to keep Yuma in check after all. Eva only smiled, pleased with the Undead King's decision. Besides, she knows that Yuma will surely be happy once he wakes up and sees he's surrounded by friends. There are still a lot of things their party needs to overcome, and our hero's fight has only just begun after all. Somewhere else at the church, the creepy priest hands Rick all of the forbidden texts they found, suggesting that even stories need to have breaks and that fate is much more fickle than what people imagine, or whatever that means. The high priest shut the book and told him that they should get ready for the story that had yet to be written, just as a white feather fell to the ground. Well, folks, the latest episode of the manga ends here, but we have a lot of interesting titles you should check out. Don't forget to click like and subscribe for more videos like these.